Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Finance, Business, and Purpose podcast. I'm here with our guest, Sofia Scott. Welcome, Sophia. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
So this is one of many appearances you've made in our online community to help share your expertise. And I know we're going to talk all about it, but to give the listeners some background, Sophia, you were a really important role in helping us actually start immigrant finance. And you've spoken to our students before about your own financial experiences and being part of an immigrant family. And tonight you're going to be talking about system stuff, which I'm super excited about with business. So why don't we just jump in with, do you want to introduce yourself and tell folks a little bit about who you are?
Sure. I'm Sophia. A little bit of personal background. I'm originally from Argentina, and I moved to the US when I was 5 to New York. Um, and yeah, basically grew up in New York most of my life, went to DC for college to study international affairs. And after graduation, I actually ended up jumping into international development or the aid sector. I covered a bunch of different roles within that sector, from business development to project management to business analysis. And It was fantastic. I got to travel the world, saw some really cool places, managed some really large projects for the US government. And most recently, I was in Ecuador. And then last year, I switched into the private sector, and I'm managing programs for different larger clients like Microsoft. And yeah, it's been an exciting ride. And then on the side, I am hoping to start developing software that helps with systems and operations for the aid sector. So got a lot.
Amazing. I can't wait to hear more. Your experiences are so fascinating, and really cool. Systems has been a common thread through all of that. So what first got you interested in systems, getting into the international development space?
Yeah. So I think now that I've thought about it and reflected, I realized that my whole life I kind of liked the way that systems started was just I generally like organization. And for me, systems is a way to organize the clutter. So I get to of the, let's say, the manual stuff and the repetitive stuff that I have to do so that I get to focus on the things that I like. So it's kind of like a shortcut.
Yeah,
um, and then I
totally.
realized I get to focus on more creative things that I really like. And so within the international development track, if you're doing government contracting, there's two avenues, I guess. So you can go down business development, which is preparing proposals, or project management. And I started down project management, and again, I kept finding ways to organize my projects in ways that would since they were pretty large teams and they were international teams, and we were working with limited resources, I use systems on how can we make these processes more efficient with the limited resources that we have, and our staff isn't burnt out. We reduce our costs, and we can focus on the really cool part of development, which is helping beneficiaries. Yeah, so it was
Amazing.
a perfect transition, I think.
That's so cool. And it led you to well, I know you've been along the way helping people start businesses, including ours. So should we talk about that story?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely can.
Yeah, and then now you're in private sector, and yeah, it's super cool how you've just done this full circle. So I'm trying to remember what year it was when we connected. I think it was 2000,
I think
I don't
we
know,
connected right at the end of 2019 and at the
2019.
start of 2020, right before the
Okay,
pandemic.
right before the pandemic. Yes, that makes sense. And at the time, we had our blog and like our website with Immigrant Finance, and we were doing a bunch of stuff, but there was like this clear need for actually working with individuals, like providing a service with their online courses on finances and all that. And I was feeling really stuck at the time with getting that off the ground. It's really vague because I was so vague in my mind because I was so stuck and lost, which is really normal when you're starting a business. Like,
That's
I
fair.
just feel like the cloud comes over and like all the insecurities and fears just kind of take over logic, right? If anyone's thinking starting a business and feeling that, it's normal. And here Sophia came into my life. And I remember exactly we were sitting outside
The
in
coffee shop.
DC. Yeah, we were sitting outside at a table in DC, and you just sat me down and you're just like, this is what you need to do. Like, and you just project managed me. And it was like you lit a spark, and it was amazing. We had like regular check-ins where you would kind of like help me implement and move forward on the goals, but it was incredible. And that's literally how we got started with all that, because of you lighting the spark the
I
management.
I love that. I realized I was actually just talking with a friend about how I like that you were talking about how it's like super common for people to just be like in a cloud or like unclear what to do. And what we were talking about is that I feel like people fall into two buckets, not like personality wise or like as in like you're either or. It's depending on the work that they're doing. They either like for example, I'll either project manage someone and it's just the project management, or like you're the talent, like you do the work and someone has to project manage you, but it's very, very difficult to be able to do both at the same time. That's why it's nice to have like an external person. It's not like, I feel like sometimes when people think like operations or project management, they're like thinking like crazy, like intense processes. It's like most of the time, like once you know what you're doing, like it's pretty intuitive, but you like can't use both sides of your brain at the same time. So it's nice to have someone like guiding you on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's definitely been my experience over the years, like working with different business coaches to support, and then also serving as a business coach to help others, which was like really, I got to be a little bit on the other side with you too. So you want to talk about that and like, yeah. Well, just, illuminate digital.
Yeah. I think for the business piece on my end, I feel like again, the main reason why I like organization is because like my mind is running like a mile a minute. And I was like, how do I focus on my strengths, or just like pick one of my ideas? And I just like remember you being like, just
you have so
like
many.
go, you have so many, but like go with the one that comes most naturally, and like try to like find the intersection of something that like comes naturally to you, the one that you can like structure and like guide people on. And then mostly just pick one, and it doesn't matter which one, just like start.
Just
And
start.
it's true. It's really like sometimes you just overthink yourself into a corner, and really you just need to take action. So
absolutely.
we're working on that still.
No, totally. Like I think we all struggle with that. And like you said, need systems and like external support to have that put it into action. So how do systems play a role? That's the big question for this talk. Like, what is the role of systems when you're in that murky, vague, insecure place where you know there's something you want to start and you know you have value to add, but you're just like, I don't know what to do.
So in that situation, like it's actually pretty neat because I feel like in my role in development, I got to work with a lot of small businesses abroad, and then more like have been doing like my own consulting. I've gotten to work with like small businesses in the US. And then in my role now, I'm getting to work with like large businesses. And it's really funny because you think, oh, they must need completely different things. And when you get into the details, yes, maybe. But it all kind of comes down to the basics of there's a lot going on, and I just think that there's one, systems kind of just help you focus on the important things. That's what I generally like to start with, because it's like the repetitive tasks, the mundane tasks, like that suck up so much time. Like you're
Mm-hmm.
already, if you're, especially if you're starting a business, and oftentimes if you're a solopreneur, but this also applies if you have a team of people, because like you have to think about what all of them are doing. But especially if you're a solo entrepreneur, like there's so much for you to do. Try to automate and streamline the boring stuff that like gets you
Yeah,
down. um
absolutely.
and yeah, it's just like it's an energy suck. And
Yes.
you want to focus on the things that actually excite you about your business, and most of the times like you don't do operations for the sake of doing operations. It's a
Mm-hmm.
means to something. And
Mm-hmm.
also, especially when you're starting out, like you have to find a balance. Like you won't be able to rely on motivation all the time. Sometimes like you wake up and you're like, I just don't want to do anything. And if you have an easy system, then it like cuts out all of the like meh work that you don't want to do.
Totally.
So I think that's like step one in like
Yeah.
why systems are great.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And I feel really lucky to have learned about that early in our business and like started automating a lot of those administrative things, and it's just been incredibly helpful. Like I cannot imagine where I would be now if I hadn't done that, you know?
Yeah. And
Because it's
I'm like, I've
hard.
seen a lot of people, and I've seen businesses that have been like open for a while operating
Yeah.
on crazy operations. And from like,
Yep.
again, small teams to larger teams, you
Mm-hmm.
can like feel the friction. And
Oh
now
wow.
I think like there's a lot of like, if you're in the network of like work productivity and whatnot, um, there's a lot of focus on culture and like team collaboration and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes what I find is that like oftentimes when like companies are in a rut and they can't produce, like everyone's just so frustrated with the operations, and it's just like it like starts meetings off on the wrong foot. It
Mm-hmm.
like just exhausts your employees, to the point where like a lot of you need to do like innovation with your business, and you have to think of new
Mm-hmm.
things, and like you have to do better customer service and like all this stuff that like your employees are not on, or your staff and your team aren't on like 100% like creativity and innovation, because they're like exhausted halfway through.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've definitely noticed that in a lot of like team culture. Like you can feel it.
That's so interesting. And like, yeah, I mean, it's just making me think how there's so many issues, challenges at the workplace in our society today, like
Mhm,
including issues around equity and inclusion, right? And
mhm.
all of that. And like from what I've seen, sometimes when you really drill down, like sometimes the most pressing thing that's like that's leading to those issues is kind of operations issues like what you're
Yeah,
talking about, or like something like HR related, like salary and benefits or something, like
also true. Also
yeah.
true. There's a lot of and this isn't to say like that like fixing operations will solve all of your like problems with diversity
No,
and inclusion, obviously,
of course not.
but
Yeah.
it is huge, because there's a
Yeah.
lot. One thing that I've learned is that there's a lot to business that's like human interaction, so like relationships that you're
Exactly.
building with
Mm-hmm.
someone. And oftentimes like I don't know how, like, if you have this experience, but I feel like oftentimes in order for me to get certain things done at work or in like in different
Mm-hmm.
projects, like I've had to be like have a good connection with like whatever team I was working with. And,
Yeah.
like sometimes biases like build into those like team interactions. And if you were to have set processes and operations, you wouldn't have to. I mean, it's important, obviously, to build strong connections and relationships with people on your team. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
but it shouldn't be in order to get things done. It's to build a better dynamic within the team and like be creative and like think of new innovations and like think of
Yeah.
cool like solutions to problems. But if you have like set operations and they're easy, like that can be taken care of and you can focus on like fostering that team dynamic and that relationship. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it definitely is a huge problem.
To help people know more what we're talking about, who are like what I have a feeling there might be people who are like, what are they talking about with systems right now? Let's give some examples to break it down for like folks who maybe are starting a new business, like the types of systems that would apply for like a solopreneur the first year or two. What comes to mind for you?
Oof, I can think of so many.
I know.
Okay, since we were just talking about teams, the big one that jumps out at me is it's crazy how few businesses have like solid onboarding processes for
Mm.
employees.
Hmm.
And like oftentimes it's you're kind of just like reacting to a gap and you're just hiring really quickly and you're not thinking about the onboarding process. And that one's super
Yeah.
interested in making sure that your employee is engaged from the beginning and is ready to jump into the work. And like it's crazy how much time, effort, and money is lost in training up an employee when you don't have a good structure. So
100%.
that one's a big
Yeah.
one. Another process that's super important that I'm like learning a lot in IT, for example, now that I'm like on an
Mhm.
IT project, is ticketing processes. So,
Mm.
I don't know if you're working in software, like that might be an important process. Now I'm thinking like smaller businesses. What's a good
Yeah, like
one?
someone who doesn't even have a team or like a tech product. So just like maybe they're doing
Like a
coaching.
brand
Yeah.
strategist or something,
Yeah.
or a
Or like
logo
graphic
design.
designer. Yeah, exactly.
Actually, anything where you're like selling your services of your products, a
Yeah.
really good one is like a client intake process. So,
Yes.
for
There you go.
example, once you've kind of like started having conversations, or whether you're doing like cold calling or it's a reference or whatever, once like they've
Hmm.
communicated through those channels, like designing a process to guide them through like a funnel into your work. And then
Hmm.
once you sign the contract, getting that like client project started and building that relationship, that's a whole process and a pretty like
Yes.
a lengthy one.
Yeah.
And limiting the like, especially if you are getting started and you're getting a new client, you want to reduce the amount of friction that you have in actually like bringing them on. You want to make sure that
Yeah.
it's easy for them to work with you.
Right.
And having a set system that you like do every single time like reduces that friction. It makes the client feel super valued and it makes you look
Hmm.
very professional. Like you know what
Yeah.
you're doing because like the client is like, I need help with, let's say, a logo and I don't
Hmm.
know what to do. And you're like, basically what you're telling your client is, don't worry, I got it. These are all the steps that we have to do to get you there. And
Yeah.
so that's kind of like a white glove treatment for your client.
That's a good example. Yeah, I
Thank you.
totally agree. And like I think that that took some time for us to get set up and like now that it is, it's been really great because like you said, then you get to focus on the actual work that you want to be
Mhm.
doing and like serving and helping people, right? When you get
Yeah.
all of this administrative stuff out of the way and like you don't have to spend brain space thinking about all those little steps every time.
Absolutely. And actually, that's another good example is scoping a project and figuring out what the client needs. That's a little mini process in and of itself.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Mm-hmm.
whether you're like, okay, I do first like a consultation and then I do a workshop, like doing like brainstorming, and then I like use this template to lay it out for them. It's just things that keep like facilitating the process for you.
Why do you think that so many business owners, especially new ones, do not think about systems or like don't realize how important they are?
That's a good
I have so
question.
many questions for you.
Yay, I love that. I I I think that honestly, it's not that people like don't necessarily think about it. It's just that there's so much to do,
Yeah.
especially for a new business. It's like drinking out of a fire hose. And it's
Yep.
really hard in that moment to say, hold on, if I were to stop, slow down, and set up a system for myself, like it's going to be painful in the moment because I'm
Yes.
I'm like doubling my work in this time frame basically because I'm doing
Mhm.
my regular job and like building out this process, but it's an investment in the future. And it's
Mhm.
really hard for any startup to just tell them like, hold on, let's take a second to design your operations. So that's actually
Mhm.
why it's so helpful to like have someone there that will say, okay, like I'm going to shadow you. I'm just going to even like watch what you're doing.
Mhm.
And then as an operations and project management expert, I can say, okay, these are like, we're mapping out like your pain points. And this is where
Mhm.
I think you can improve. And just like writing it down. Like another thing I've noticed is a lot of smaller businesses now use virtual assistants,
Mhm.
and onboarding a virtual assistant requires you to explain to them what you want them to do
Yeah.
specifically. And like
Yep.
think about how much time you can save if you were to have like all those things written down and you were just to like hand it over to your virtual assistant.
Oh
But who
yeah,
has
I've
time
been
to put that
there.
operations manual together? So that's
Yeah.
why,
Yeah.
that's what I think. I think people do think about it. It's just like there's no time to stop and do it.
That's exactly right. The first time I really had to like dive in and create build out some systems. I remember my business coach just being like, this is gonna fucking suck for like
Yeah.
the next 3 months. It's gonna suck. Like, it's not fun building
Yeah.
system. Maybe for
It
someone
is.
like you, it is.
It is. Oh, yes. Fair. But I try to make it fun. Like, oh my gosh. Okay. So the other day with my colleagues, I was trying to explain like the logistics of facilitating a workshop. Why?
Mhm.
Because the ability to facilitate a workshop helps you with like designing processes, but it helps you with, and it's such a good tool to have. And I was like, explaining the logistics of facilitating a workshop is so boring. Like nobody's gonna want to do it. So I was like, all right, what can we do to like have a little twist to it? And I was like, all right, I'm gonna facilitate a workshop about I had recently gone to Harry Potter World in Florida. So I was like, let's design a new ride for Harry Potter World. And so I like taught them how to, or I'm sure a lot of them already knew, but it was more like a refresher,
Yeah.
how to use different tools in workshop facilitation by guiding them through a
Oh,
workshop
cool.
about
That's really
Harry
smart.
Potter.
Yeah, that's a way to make
So
it more fun. Yeah.
yeah, I can't, unfortunately can't do that with
Very-
like all the projects because we actually have to focus on the process, but
Yeah.
I try to bring a little bit of humor and lightheartedness to like the boring work, I guess, for other
Yeah.
people, not for me.
Yeah. I love that. What that makes me want to ask, like, what drives you to be helping businesses with systems? Like, what excites you about that?
Oh, I don't, oh my gosh, I love working with like small to medium sized businesses because it's just the like it's a lot of hard work and it's a lot of teamwork and trust. And to be honest,
Mhm.
like it really doesn't work if you don't trust the person, because if not, you're
Mhm.
going to be like arguing about like why something is necessary, and
Yeah.
if it's not worth it. Like if you don't have the trust in the process, then it's just not going to work. But seeing the absolute difference in a like whether in a business, whether it's like one person or a team of people, just like okay, I'm going to explain it like this. If you're the type of person that likes to untangle knots and necklaces, I feel like operations is for you. Because the satisfaction that you get from like untangling a problem and like straightening it out and just watching this business or team like fly after you like work out this process is just such an amazing feeling. It's a rush, and I get it's like the same for me. So I think
Super
that's why
cool.
I like helping businesses. And also
Yeah.
like most of the business owners that I like work with are so passionate about like why they do it. And like
Hmm.
I hate to see them being like impeded by something that for
Mm.
me is like I can fix it for them, and
Yeah.
then they get to focus on what makes them super happy. So it's
Yeah.
just it's such a like positive environment after everything gets like ironed out. And then like I had this manager where I was like explaining processes to once, and she's like, now that you taught me about how to spot process improvements, she's like, I see it everywhere. She's like, I went to Chipotle and I was like, wow, like their like efficiency is amazing. And then I think she went to another restaurant and she's like, their like guest experience could improve with some processes. And I was like, yes, making processes, little processes everywhere.
Oh my God. Amazing. Amazing.
um
Amazing.
and that's an area that I like especially really like. I think operations and systems works across every single industry, and
Hmm.
I have so many thoughts with people that are like, ugh, processes gross. It's like when, what is it? The tail wags the dog. And I'm like, no, that just means it's a poorly designed process. You need to improve it. But I particularly love like processes around like the hospitality industry. I think
Mm.
it's super neat, like um just like if you ever go to a restaurant, especially for like the front of house, right, the design of the guest experience,
Hmm.
like actually start checking it out, how you feel when you're in the space, like how you feel like attended, like do you feel like you're getting your food on time, like how's the customer service, how often your like waiter checks on you. You start noticing which ones are intentional and which ones are like a mess. And the
Hmm.
intentional ones, it's just such a smooth experience. It's like listening to like a perfect song. You're just like, this just went magically. And then
Yeah.
other time, like I feel like the hospitality is the one that you notice the most, because you're just like,
Hmm.
if it works, it's working great. And if it doesn't work, you're like, I don't ever want to come
Yeah.
to this restaurant ever again. So
It's so true.
that's
There's
the part.
nothing like a restaurant experience where like the service is amazing, the food is amazing, the environment's amazing, just like everything works together. It's
Yeah.
rare.
Yeah. And it's crazy, like once you start getting into the restaurant industry, how many moving pieces there are. There are like
Hmm.
processes within processes within processes. And like some, they don't necessarily have to be complicated, but everyone just needs to know what they are so they can like just run in like a machine. I feel like I'm comparing processes to a lot of different things tonight.
It's super cool. I love hearing how passionate you are about it. And I'm really hopeful that, like, for those folks in our community who are thinking of starting businesses or maybe have a business already, that this will draw their attention to this topic of systems and like the ideas that are sparking for folks listening.
Yeah.
I guess my final question for you, and then I want anything else you want to share, please do, is like, how would you kind of teach people briefly, how they can go about thinking about building systems in their new business if they've like not, this is the first time it's on their radar. Like where should they start?
That's that's a good one. I'm trying to think of how someone can start identifying it on their own. I would take some time to reflect on some pain points that you're experiencing with your business. Like with your
What do you mean
like
by that?
instinct, with your gut, right? Like what like is either irritating you about your process, or like what makes you just go, ugh, I really don't want
Mm-hmm.
to do that today.
Yeah.
Um, and then see if like kind of like a customer journey map. I don't know if like people have heard of that like tool, but it's basically you just print out the spreadsheet and it's really like easy. You start mapping out like what actual steps you follow to accomplish something. You'll either find that you follow the same process each time, or you have 18 different ways you can do something. And those I would say are the most common ones that you can fix. You can either look at an existing process that you follow each time and say, like, are there any things that I can combine? Are there any things that I can make? Like, if I'm going to, I don't know, I have to submit a proposal. Should I make a proposal template so I don't have to write one from scratch every time?
Yeah.
Or like a budget, I should have something ready to go so I don't have to think through what budget line items I have to include. And you can also, and I think a lot of people like to start talking about tools, like cool, neat tools, which I love talking about tools. But there's a ton at people's disposal that are like affordable or already come included in the licenses that they have, where you can like automate certain things, like automate sending emails. Or the other option, which is if you're noticing that you're doing something in 18 different ways, think through whether you can follow the same way to get the same result. And then once you're there, you can move to step 2, which is like, once you have that process, figure out how you can do it faster, leaner, like combining and whatnot. So
super cool. I'm taking notes. That's really helpful. I love how you explain that. Yeah, I love it. I think of it the same way. Yeah, like just start paying attention to what are the things that you're spending a lot of time on that are administrative, that might not be the best use of your time, and like are taking away from your gift, right?
Yeah.
And like, how could those be automated?
Yeah. And whether that's like hiring out a virtual assistant or like using software to help automate, it might the solution might also just be a pen and paper. It just might be that like you have to grab it. It doesn't have to be that complex, but systems are everywhere.
Totally. It can be anything from something super high tech to, you know, like one of my systems is when little tasks come up throughout the day, I write it down by hand so that I don't miss it, and then I check it off as I get it done throughout the week, right?
Totally. Yeah.
Because otherwise it gets lost. Like it's not worth taking the time to like go write it up in a to-do list, right? That kind of thing. One other thing I want to throw out there to give people another example, like the quintessential initial system I like to talk about and think about for online businesses is like automating having a call scheduled, right? So like a lot of online business owners will offer free consultations, or they call it different things, clarity call, you know, whatever it is. And it's usually to like get to know people in their audience, right? And like potentially offer their services. And so if there's a way, like there's so many free softwares you can use to have that get booked automatically with a link, and then have a calendar invite go out automatically, and then have a reminder go out automatically. So that was one of the first things that I was like, oh my gosh, this is saving me so much time. Like, what else can I automate?
Once you start, you like start looking for it everywhere. That's like my favorite part about it, because you're just like, I can save so much time.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
It's great. It's really a fantastic feeling when you feel like your brain is slowly uncluttering because you're automating all of it, and then you're just like, I can actually focus on solving this problem that I've been thinking about for some time because I don't have to worry about all this.
Yeah, I can't encourage people enough to think about this and take Sophia's advice. Sophia, if folks are like, I know this is important after hearing this, but I'm not a systems person, I need help, can they contact you? Like, what's the best way to reach out?
They can absolutely contact me. I'm like still in the process of getting everything set up. But you can definitely send me an email. And I don't know if should I just share? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So it's Sophia.G.Scott. So it's my personal email for now until like I have everything set up, and then I'll probably have more information. And it's
Perfect.
at gmail.com.
Perfect. We'll link that in the show notes and
Perfect.
add in other things as you have them over time. So if you're listening later, like check out the show notes. But thank you so much. This was such valuable advice that you gave people, and on such an important topic that like is not one that many people can make exciting, but I feel like you've done it with your
I'm glad
passion.
you agree.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. You're making me be like, what can I systematize next? You know? I actually have a lot to systematize. It never ends. There's
Yeah.
always more.
There's always more. It's
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Just systematize your life. And you can even apply to your personal life. So we could go on about that for next
Do you
time.
want to say a quick word on that? Because I totally agree.
Okay, sure. Quick snippet on like systematizing your life. And I feel like we can just apply, like we can use the example of personal finance because we are
Yeah.
both obviously so passionate about that one.
Yeah.
Like I remember in like one of the classes we were talking about how like between but like the exercise of budgeting and whatnot, and then you're
Hmm.
like, all right, like how do I move my money around? Automating your contributions, whether it's to your like saving accounts or to your
Yes.
investment accounts. So like paying yourself first is
Hmm.
such a great way to like, that's like the perfect example of a
Yeah.
system or like a quick personal automation system that saves you so
Yep.
much time, because you end up like not having to, like, you just end up budgeting what's left after you like started off.
Yeah.
Or I don't know, another good like system is meal prep. I know that that's been like
Oh
a
yeah.
popular one, but again, saves you so much time if you just invest some time
And money.
and money. Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
and then you can get me started on like food waste in the US. We're gonna start talking about a million topics.
I
Um,
know.
but yeah, those are, I would say, like the two easy ones. But there's so much else that you can automate in your
Yeah.
personal life. So yeah.
It's incredible. I'm a big fan of systematizing things with finances too. And yeah, we teach a lot of that in immigrant finance school, and you helped develop some of that and teach some of that too. So yeah, I'll just emphasize what you were saying with the automating your savings and investments. It's like that's literally how you make your financial goals happen, because you cut out the emotions, right?
Exactly.
When it just happens, no matter what, every month on the same day of the month, like you
It's
don't
just
get
go.
into this whole thing like, should I do this? Like, should I spend on this
Oh,
instead? Like,
and
you
also
know,
like think about the amount, I always tell people this, like think about the amount of tasks, like we'll just use like when bills still come in snail mail, like you just leave them stacking up because like you're like, I
mhm.
don't want to do them, but then you do
Yeah.
them and it takes like 5 minutes and then you're done.
Yep.
So
Right.
all the automations, just think about like, okay, it's going to take some time now, but then it's done and then you never have to do it again. That
Yes.
changed my life. I was like, oh, it's either I do it every single month, or get this, you do it once and then you're done.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
time
It's
saver.
true. Oh, such good advice. Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing all this wisdom, Sophia. It was great to have you on the show as always, and to
Thanks,
have
Sophia.
you, share all your expertise.
Yeah, it was, thank you for having me here.
Yeah, thank you. We'll talk soon. Bye for now,
Bye.
everyone.
Bye.